Hello everyone. In this video, we will learn how to take an input from a user in Java. So for that, let's discuss the agenda of this video. So we're going to discuss few things. Firstly, we'll discuss the previous way in which we used to take an input. Say before, what we used to do was that we used to define a variable, say int n is equal to 10, and say I have to print all numbers from 1 to 10. What I used to do is that I used to run a for loop. I is equal to 0, I is less than equal to n, I plus plus, and I used to print the numbers. And if I run this, and it will input from 1 to 10, not that it matters. The point I'm trying to explain here is that we get an output from 1 to 10. That's the tradition that we used to follow up till now. But I say that, you know what, why don't you take an input from a user instead of writing the value on your own? And I say that, say, for example, there is an ATM and you're supposed to get some money out of the ATM machine. So you can't expect the ATM to know what amount you will be withdrawing, right? You have to enter the amount yourself. So as a user, you will be entering the amount yourself, and that is a feature that we'll be implementing right now. Say for that I have to use something called a scanner, which will be defined in this manner. This SCN is a variable name which is of type scanner. For it to be a little more relatable to you, I say that there's a variable here. The data type is integer, right? Similarly, we have the variable SCN here. Its type is scanner. This is defined in this manner, new scanner, and it uses something called system.in, that is system.in. And you can compare this to system.out. What system.in does is that it is basically related to your keyboard. So what you enter via your keyboard is what is received in, the scanner. And the way to take an input by a user is by means of the scanner. And how you do that for an integer specifically is scn dot next int. This is the function that is used to take an input for an integer. So now, instead of hard coding the value in this particular variable, you can take the input from a user. Say I put the input as 7 and I run this code. I'll get my output as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is correct, right? And that is how you take an input for an integer, scn.nextInt. For a string, let me just remove this part for now. For a string, the procedure is similar. I say string str is equal to scn.next line. Instead of next int, we write next line for string. There is also a function called scn.next, but let's stick to scn.next line here, since that is what you will be using most frequently. And now we have our string input with us, and for printing our input, I say I want to greet somebody. I say hello, and say we store a name here, hello space plus name. I put something here, say I put Pepcoder. I run this and I get my output as hello Pepcoder. Of course, the previous way to define a string was like this, and I don't need to print this to show you what the output will be, since I'm sure you're familiar with how to do that yourself, if you've watched the previous videos, that is. And another case that I would like to introduce to you here is that now we've seen how to take an input for an integer. We've seen how to take an input for a string. Now let's try to do both. I take an input for an integer, I take an input for a string, and I get an output here that is of the sort, say hello whatever my name is, and I print a message that says Here is your count. I put 10 as my number and Pepcoder as my name. On running, let's see what we get. Ideally, what we should get is that hello Pepcoder, here is your output, here is your count, and the count should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But what we're actually getting is that hello blank, here is your count. This is a small bug in Java, and the bug is that we can't take an integer and a string consecutively just in this form. To compensate for it, what we'll do is that we'll actually take an integer input in the form of a string, but this will not be the complete solution. To complete it, we'll have to write integer dot parse int. This will convert the string input to our integer if it's of the appropriate form. Mark my words, if it's of the appropriate form. So now if we run this with the same input, we get hello Pepcoder, here is your count. And the count is printing perfectly. So in this video, we've discussed the previous way in which we used to take an input. We know how to take a user input, an integer, in string, and if you have to take them together by any chance. And with this, we now know the 5 main elements of programming, and in Java at least, and we can actually solve the questions that come after with these elements. We know how to print an output. We know how to initialize variables. We know about conditions. We know about loops. And we know about how to take an input now. With these, we are good to go. Hope you found out useful. If you did, leave a like, drop a comment, and feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.